of artwork from back when I was in college, my senior thesis project. I printed the image onto canvas and then quilted vinyl on top of it. It's lined in Dupioni silk. I was really thinking and channeling Chanel's quilted pattern, but instead of having it sideways so that it's all on the diagonals, I made it rectilinear. It's digital art. It's also referencing the pixel, the shape of pixels, the little squares that images are comprised of in Photoshop. For this bag, I grew up on a farm in New Hampshire. I took a photograph of some birch trees behind the house where I grew up, and this was on winter break, so it had just snowed. I manipulated the image just a little bit in Adobe Illustrator, another incredibly powerful and useful program to learn if you're interested in image creation and manipulation. I came up with this image, printed it onto canvas, and sewed it into this very simple, flat envelope clutch shape. This is the same image, but I just manipulated it a little bit further and added the very bright pop art colors to it, like the button on the flap of the bag. Fortunately, envelope clutch bags have been incredibly popular in the retail market for the past 5 or 6 years. There was a long stretch of time where people just weren't carrying bags like this. As phones have gotten smaller, as people have started carrying more things than just a wallet around with them, they have several electronic devices, but maybe not so many things that they need to carry a large bag. These smaller handheld bags have become really the foundation of my business. I support myself and the work that I do with these smaller, handheld, less expensive pieces so that on the side I can make more elaborate, larger, more expensive bags. This is that same print of the birch trees again that I just continue to manipulate further. One of the great things about working with technology as opposed to just simply painting by hand is that you can finish a project and then you can go back to an earlier stage, start over again, create something entirely different. Whereas when you're painting, oftentimes you reach a point of no return where you can't go back and undo something that you've done. Digital media allows you to work in series, and figuring out how to frame them as bags is just the cornerstone of me creating a business out of being an artist. This bag was fun. A friend of mine, her son, had sketched these little monster drawings, and I scanned the drawings in and then used Illustrator to vectorize, turn the drawings into mathematical equations, which were then digitally embroidered into Dupioni silk. This is actually a really simple and accessible process. You can do it with pretty much any company that embroiders t-shirts or hats. You can bring an image to them and have it embroidered in a t-shirt or fabric that you can sew up. The feathers in the center flap are a rooster, really cute little bag. This is another bag that I made using digital embroidery. This one was a little bit more elaborate. Each of these bags has roughly 100,000 stitches of colored thread in it. Started out as paint that I dripped down on paper. I photographed it, placed the different colors of paint on top of each other, and then sent them to a company that vectorized the image for the specific machine embroiderer that I worked with, which is in Providence. Again, these are all embroidered on Dupioni silk. So as I mentioned, I spent about $150 a yard to print my own custom fabrics. Things have changed a lot since 2008. There is now spoonflower.com, which is a website where you can submit your own photographs, JPEGs, digital artwork, and you can print it on a whole range of fabrics that they offer there, starting at $15 a square foot. I'm sorry, $15 a yard with no setup fee as well. So if you are interested in printing your own custom textiles and maybe trying to make a dress, you can now do that without spending a fortune. An incredible resource for new designers who are working on small scales. I will say, if you are interested in printing the fabrics, the blacks do not come out very well, but all the other colors are pretty good. They also have organic fabrics on there if you're interested in creating green designs with your own custom prints on them. Here's another website you may know of, Zazzle.com. If you don't know how to sew, but you like the idea of putting your own image onto handbags, t-shirts, you name it, mouse pads, this is a website that will print the images for you on pre-made products. So they have clutch bags that they sell there with zippers on the top, messenger bags. This is a way that you can create a product without having to learn how to sew. And I don't have an image of it, but does anyone here know what Square is? Okay, Square is a mobile credit card processing device that plugs into your phone. It can connect directly with your bank account. It's a way that you can create a store without having to have a brick and mortar space. You can be sitting next to your friend in your apartment and say, I just printed this bag, would you like to buy it? And they can say, yes, I would love to buy it. You can take their credit card, enter it in right there. You don't need to rely on a store to sell, but if you are a creative person and you want to spend your life being creative and you don't have access to infinite funds, you need to figure out how to sell. Square is a great way to learn how to make sales on your own without relying on anyone else. And don't be afraid to sell either, because when someone purchases your work, it's their way of saying, go ahead and make more, continue doing this. So you can take photos of a party that you went to, print it out on a t-shirt or a bag, using a source like Zazzle, and then go ahead and sell it to your friends. You've done the whole process without really needing any assistance from anyone else. You could do it right in your, sitting at your bed in your apartment. I worked in retail for quite a while after graduating college, and then in 2006, I took on a new career. I was managing a real estate investment trust, a really big real estate firm. I was also making bags on the side, but I realized that I wasn't making enough money to really make all of the ends meet and to pay the immense costs of just maintaining a business and small production. I did that job for about 6 years. In that time, I did sell to major stores, Nordstrom, Fred Segal, I mentioned, Patricia Field, which is in New York. She did the costumes for Sex and the City. She's really wacky. She was lovely. It was really a huge honor to be in the store. Bottom line, though, it's incredibly expensive to produce merchandise for a store, especially a large store like Nordstrom. They want to have you ship your product to them, and they'll wait 1 month to 3 months before actually paying you for it. So you need to finance and fund your production on your own before you get paid for it. And then with a company like Nordstrom, maybe a year later, they'll try and return stuff back to you and say you need to pay us back because a customer returned it. Have you ever returned something after wearing it because it broke? The store is not the one that's honoring you. It's the company that created that product that is required under the contract of selling to the store to honor that return that you've done. So the next time you return something that you've purchased because it's broken, do consider that it does trickle down not to the store where you purchased it, but to the company that provided it. And if you are in the position to run your own product line at some point, producing your own garments, that's a lesson that you'll learn as well. If you're just selling to your friends using your Square device and someone has a problem with something, you can just fix it. So there is something to be said for this very small model of creating and selling directly to your circle. As I mentioned, I worked this job in real estate for 6 years, and it was an awful job. It was the worst job ever. Like, retail, selling shoes to really mean women was nothing compared to this job. I was constantly beat up. So I decided one day, 2 years ago, exactly 2 years ago, that I had finally had enough, and I dropped off my keys, my work phone, external hard drive, and said something that basically made it very clear that I was never coming back. It was really amazing. Whenever you have a cathartic moment, you know good things can really come out of it. But the first thing I did was I freaked out. And I went and I bought a hammock because I was working like mad for these people for 6 years. I was lying in the hammock and freaking out. And I took a photograph of the sky. And this is that image of that moment when I decided to leave the career that financed my business but no longer served me and was doing more harm than good. This is a fabric that it was actually fairly overcast that day, so I reduced the image, I posterized it down to 5 colors and pushed the saturation up in the image. If you use Photoshop or even iPhoto, you can play with saturation. So I got the colors to pop a little bit more. And I printed this fabric. This is a canvas, the heaviest upholstering fabric that Swoonflower sells. This bag is also reversible. It flips around both ways. This is another image that I made from that photograph of the sky, and I placed the angels on top of it, and I have to say, for like the first 6 months after leaving, I was really, really bitter. So this was the lining I put inside the bag. This bag sold really fast. Part of the process that I use is printing onto canvas, and then I coat the canvas, and I use a spray coating for most of the canvas. So over the course of 5 or 6 years of making these prints, I accumulated a ton of aerosol spray cans, which I had to dispose of at the state landfill. When I got to the landfill, I asked if there was any way that I could take photos of the landfill, and somehow the gentleman that was taking my bags put me in contact with the director of the facility, who transferred me over to his assistant, and she seemed willing to bend over backwards to give me a private tour of the Johnston, Rhode Island landfill. It turns out, well, she said, "How do you know the director of the facility?" I didn't know him, but apparently being connected by accident through him made his assistant think that I was somehow important enough to drop everything for him. This is a photograph. I took some photographs of the open face of the landfill, which were really depressing and were not anything that I could use creatively on my own. And if you haven't taken a tour of the state trash facility or any recycling or trash facility, it's definitely something that you should do. Just see where all of our waste goes and how it accumulates. And anyway, this is a photograph of the new state recycling facility, which is a fascinating complex where everything gets dumped into a pile. So I took this photo and printed it onto this canvas to make the garbage bag. If you look very closely, you can make out trash in the bag. I like puns with the bags. I think they're really funny, and it's one of the things that people have come to expect from my work. And it's also part of keeping a good sense of humor about what I do. It's not always easy running a business, and if at least the work that you're doing is amusing, it lessens the blow when you start to do your monthly accounting. This is an evening bag version of the trash bag with the little dump truck on the top. Wow. It's the same print of garbage. I mentioned before googly eyes. This was actually made before the trash bag. It's a really interesting jacquard, and I glued all of the googly eyes onto this bag. This fabric is amazing. It's made out of stainless steel, and I purchased 1 yard. It's basically like Kevlar. I purchased 1 yard of the fabric, which cost $300 for 1 yard, and I make these very, very small evening bags, which don't use a whole lot of the fabric, so the bags are somewhat affordable.